second day of Christmas, Moose brings to me. Returning is Hayden Newman to discuss the home media release of Reunion from Hell 2.
Welcome, Horror Hounds, to another installment of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. I'm your host and gift giver, Moose. Today's gift is a gift of a reunion. Not just any reunion, but a reunion from hell. That's right, we are talking about one of our favorite independent films, Reunion from Hell 2. And who better to do that than the writer, director, and actor from the movie, Hayden Newman.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. How you been?
Pretty good, just steadily working.
So, yeah, Reunion from Hell 2 should be coming up on a public physical release soon.
Yes, I'm getting ready to start, pre-orders for that. And if you want to pre-order, you can contact me through my Facebook or my Instagram, and we can set it up. And then it'll be going to streaming soon too. Sam Hodge, who is my co-director, is almost done finishing up the closed captioning for it to be sent off to the company that sends the film out to all the streaming platforms.
So as you listen to this, feel free to send Sam some ice for his knuckles.
Yes. When I talked to him today, he had typed 1,056 words of dialogue, and he was only at 77 minutes of the film, and the film runs 98 minutes.
That is insane. And since the last time we talked, the first movie has been picked up on a number of streaming services.
Yes, it has. It's currently on Tubi. It's on Vudu/Fandango. It's on Apple TV. It's on Amazon Prime. That's just the ones that come straight to mind. It's on. You can find it if you type in, Reunion from Hell. Finding it to watch is very easy.
I say it's definitely on all the big ones, and
yes.
It's like you said, it's easy to find. It's go out and watch it before 2 comes out as a refresher, because it's in the sequence. It's the appetizer, as it were, to the story. It placates your taste buds. It lays out the character development. It tells you who everybody is. It gives you the backstory.
Yes, and that was extremely important for me when we were doing one, was to lay out the backstories for these characters, so you did care about the characters and you know who these characters are. That way, when we got to 2, you know who the characters are, you know their history, and obviously in between 1 and 2, there's been some more history added. They've changed a little bit, but you could jump right into the story in 2.
And jump in you do. And I've had the pleasure of watching 2 a few times, actually. And I can't, say enough nice things about it. I'm actually looking forward to hearing what the public has to say about it, because in my opinion, as far as sequels go, this is your empire. This is 1,000 times better than the first movie.
Which, thank you. That is a huge compliment. I never set out to make it better than the first movie, but I knew going into a sequel, typically sequels are not as good as the first movie. So I knew going into a sequel, we had to up the ante. We had to up the story. We had to, do everything bigger.
Well, and not just bigger, but I think you guys worked a lot of the kinks out in the first movie. And
yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure, we've talked about that one of the other times we've talked about this movie, but, now having watched the movie, the cinematography is better. You know, your writing has, the writing has improved. The acting has improved. Because if you remember when you and I got together way back on the 13 days to talk about the first reunion,
Yes.
that was one of my biggest critiques about the movie was, the campy dialogue and, just stuff like that. That really isn't in the second movie. It is much more compelling. It's more, yeah, there's some one-liners that, just like, but not grown worthy in a bad way.
Yeah.
But the ones that like, it's like, stop, but they're fun.
Yeah.
And
And
and the chemistry in this is, and the chemistry in the first one was great, but the on-screen chemistry in this, in Reunion from Hell 2, really pulls you in.
yeah, we had a lot of fun. Just like one, we all lived together for the entirety of the shoot. But unlike one, being that two takes place in a secluded cabin in the mountains, we were stuck on top of that mountain, and it was literally on top of the mountain. The person who owned the cabin failed to tell us that when we rented the cabin. It was literally on top, so we were stuck up there for the entirety of the shoot. So we really got to know each other and bond in that way, and I think it pulls through and shows in the film.
Oh, absolutely. And I do have I do have one big complaint about this film. And I don't think I've mentioned this to you and all the times we talked about this, on Messenger or anything. And that's Mark Patton's character is my favorite character in the movie. There's not enough of him.
Well, okay. The funny thing about Mark is, I love for my actors, and I love for my actors to turn the characters into who they believe they are. I write it, but I don't expect them to, do it exactly as it's written, or, I envision that character a certain way. And I remember the day we shot his first scene, and it was actually when his character is introduced in the movie, and he turns around and delivers that first line, and he delivered it to me, and the way he delivered it, all I could think was, okay, that's how he's playing it. This is amazing. And he had us cracking up in between takes. I mean, even some takes we would mess up because of the way he was playing that character, and it was just so funny, and just he brought so much life to that character than what I even envisioned.
Well, and that's, I'm looking at my notes, and that's what I have is, he's comedy gold in this role as this just reporter who just, he wants to cash in on your tragedy,
Yeah, and
the events of one, that's his sole purpose, make his mark on Riley's story, but
well,
he's so comedic about it. It is amazing.
exactly. And when you're introduced to his character, you do find out that he did write a book about the events that took place in one. He got a movie deal out of it. And he just keeps hounding Riley and the surviving cast members from one. He just keeps hounding them because he wants to just get more and more and more out of it. And of course, it ends up not giving too many, not really giving a spoiler away. You can see it in the trailer. He ends up right in the middle of the story.
Mm-hmm.
That he was trying to create. So,
and with the level of comedy that he brings in, it breaks up some very tense situations throughout the film as he's right in the midst of this slasher situation.
Exactly. And, he is hilarious, but he is also, the type of guy or reporter you just sometimes just want to knock the crap out of.
Yeah, it's like he is the reporter. You want to turn around and shoot yourself, but as the viewer, you're watching this, and his comedic timing is just on par. I mean, just you know, couldn't be better.
Exactly. And some of the things he did was not scripted at all. He just did it in the heat of the moment. And it would catch us off guard, but we were like, that's great. Let's go for another take.
I mean, there's a scene it's in the trailer. You guys are coming down the stairs,
Mm-hmm.
and like I think he screams or something, and it's just the way it happens is just like it's just super, like the music's just super foreboding and just this really dark, like ominous scene, and then he just breaks it up,
Yeah.
and you can't help but laugh.
Exactly. He played that role to a T. He played it perfectly. I could not have asked for a better actor to play that role.
No, and like I said, I would have loved to see more of this character, and you know,
Yeah,
who knows,
I
maybe
believe
in
a
the
lot of
future.
fans, a lot of fans are of the character, and he, from everybody that I know that has seen the film, that went to the opening premiere of the film, everybody talked about Mark's performance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, originally when I was writing the script for two, I didn't, because Mark was not casted at that point. Um, so, and again, I didn't know how Mark would play the role. So originally, I didn't give that character. He was like the character that just pops up from time to time and just annoys the heck out of Riley and the family.
Well, and opposite Mark, who is they're annoying the family and just basically badgering the family. Uh, you cast Lydia Manson as Riley's best friend,
Yes.
and she plays this sassy, provocative, kind of super supportive best friend. Like she is the ultimate best friend.
Yeah.
And watching her in this role, a lot of her range really shines through. In She has some very emotional scenes in this movie.
She really does, and I mean, hats off, to her, because one particular emotional scene she has, I remember watching her film that scene and where she was going in her head to get to that point. And when we called action, she just went into it. And I could not have asked for a better person to play that role either. The casting in this film, I believe, was casted perfectly.
100%. I mean, with in regards to Lydia, she you feel like, as you're watching this, you feel the pain that she's going through, and that is a mark for a great mark for any actress or actor.
Yes.
When the viewer who's not on set but is just watching this can actually feel what that character is going through.
Well, it's like I said, or you said, Elena, which is the character Lydia plays, is the very sassy, best friend, is always right there. And, once things start going down, her tone really changes in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we're in survival mode. So it was to watch her go from that sassy ness that she had and the way she done certain scenes, especially with Riley, and to watch her go from that to survival mode was amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, she went from this, just, perky best friend to, all right, let's do the damn thing. And
Yeah.
it was great to watch. And then, you had some other new cast, because unfortunately, Cathy Podewell couldn't make it back.
Yes, sadly, Cathy couldn't make it back for two due to some family issues. We were sad to not have her there for two. And you can say who was casted in that role, and I'll tell the story about that.
Let's say, and so we get the stunning Lisa Wilcox cast as your mom for this movie.
Yes, and it was funny because originally when I learned that Cathy could not come back, because to me, from in my opinion, one was really Riley's story, two was more Laurel's story. I mean, Riley's still involved, but it was more her story. And when I found out Cathy couldn't return, I actually said, well, then I'm going to rewrite the whole film. And she said, no, you're not. This script is amazing. You have my blessing to recast. So I sat back and you think about that famous recast in Nightmare 4 with Tuesday Night playing Kristen, where Patricia Arquette originated the role in Nightmare 3. And I remember the first time, yes, first of all, Tuesday brought her own skills to Kristen. But I remember the first time I watched it, when she walks up and they say she's Kristen, and I'm like, that's not Kristen. Because she looked nothing like Patricia Arquette.
Right.
So I was like, I've got to find somebody that is talented enough and looks close enough to Cathy. And I sat back and I started looking through things. And if you look at it, first of all, Lisa was talented enough to take on the role. And if you look at a picture of her and Cathy next to each other, they look like they could be sisters. They look so much alike.
Yeah, I made that mistake when we were working on marketing stuff, if you remember.
Yeah. They look so much alike. So it was a perfect recast. And that was important to me because I didn't want people like, well, who is this? That's not Laurel. I wanted it to at least be the talent and for her to look as close as Cathy as possible.
Well, and as much as Mark is the comedy in this movie, I think Lisa and the way you wrote Laurel is the heart.
Yes. Like I said, 2 was always in my mind as being very much Laurel's film because she went through a very traumatic experience at the end of 1. And you got to think,
I say the end of 1, her entire world came crashing down.
Yes. So it was, where do we take this character next to show that she's trying to move on with her life and she holds on to what she still has. And I've always said that I felt with 2, Laurel and Riley are both ready to die, but you're not going to get to the other one. They're basically willing to die for each other. You're not going to get to, in Laurel's aspect, you can kill me, but you're not going to get to Riley. And in Riley's aspect, you can kill me, but you're not going to get to her.
Right. And in regards to moving on and holding on to, what she has, we see James Stokes return as Sheriff Mike,
Yes.
who we find out is now in a relationship with Laurel.
Yes, and that was a lot of fun too. James had a very small cameo in the first film, and I wanted to give Laurel that, hope. Like you said, her world come crashing down at the end of one. Um, I wanted to give her, that spark of life and show that even though the events of one are still with her, she's trying to move on, and all she has left in this world, in her mind, is Riley and Mike, and then a new character, which I'll let you say who plays that character, but I'll say a new character that comes into the picture named Clay, who is her brother, her baby brother. That's all she has now.
Now, I really liked James's portrayal of Mike in this, because you get to see two versions of Mike.
Yeah.
You get overprotective Sheriff Mike, like he's full cop mode Sheriff Mike, and you also get to see the more gentler, and I think he even refers to himself as just Mike. So
Yes,
there's
he does.
Sheriff Mike and just Mike.
Yeah.
And it is clearly two very different mindsets, of essentially on the job and family man. And it's
Exactly.
It's fun isn't the right word to watch, right word to say, but it's so nice to watch the switch throughout this movie of, career man, career cop, stern, protective, alpha male, to I'm here for my family.
Yeah. And there was one in particular scene, and gosh, that scene took a lot out of me. It was a very emotional scene with him. And he kept me going during that scene because we had to do so many takes of it.
Oh, I know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a long scene, and I have to go to a very emotional state. And Mike, even though he is not Riley's father or stepfather, he still takes control of the situation and has that fatherly, what's the word I'm looking for? That
he does
fatherly,
fill in, the father figure.
Yeah.
For that scene, and it's funny. This what's now a 2-movie franchise started with the death of Riley's father.
Exactly.
And now in 2, Riley has 2 father figures in this movie. There's, Mike, who's dating his mom, and then there's Uncle Clay, played by Danny Hassel.
Yes.
And Danny, as Uncle Clay, the best way I can describe Clay is he's everybody's favorite uncle. He's that uncle that you just, he's the one that'll give you your first beer, will, take you out back behind the barn, smoke your first joint with you, do all that stupid shit with you. But at the end of the day, is there when you need him.
100%, yes. And I loved working with Danny. I just absolutely loved working with Danny. And Danny's very much like that in real life. Danny's very laid back, down to earth. But to watch him play Clay, you can tell he's also very protective of Riley and Laurel, especially in certain scenes. He goes into that protective mode because I think he may have felt, even though he's younger, his character is supposed to be Laurel's younger brother. I think he may have felt that once Riley's father died, he had to, step up and, try to take control and help. And I think he may have also felt, you know, a little bit of regret of how Riley handled the events that took place before one and Riley leaving town, that he wasn't able to get through to Riley.
Oh, 100%. And I do have notes on like the rest of the supporting cast. So if you're listening, I'm not leaving you out. There's just a lot of you.
Yes.
And I will post my full review in the episode description. It is a spoiler-free review, so don't worry, listeners. I'm not going to ruin the movie for you. Trust me, I want you to see this movie. You need to see this movie. There is a scene that I have to mention, though. It's not in the trailers. It's not giving anything away, but it makes me laugh every time I watch it. The character Julian,
Yes.
is at the cabin.
Yes.
And we see, Sheriff Mike in Sheriff Mike mode.
Yeah.
And he throws him out of the cabin.
Yes.
And he doesn't just throw him out of the cabin. He straight Fresh Princes his ass out of the cabin. Chucks him out like Uncle Phil did Jazz. And it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like, I can't watch that scene without picturing the, and it's hilarious.
Well, that wasn't scripted that way either. It was scripted that Mike, got him out of the cabin, but them working on it together decided to do it in that aspect. And they came to me and to Sam, who, co-directs with me, and said, "What do you think about this?" And we were like, "Oh my God, we absolutely love it."
Because again, it goes back to what I was saying about Mark. It adds that little bit of comedy right when it needs to.
Yeah.
And anybody who grew up watching The Fresh Prince, you see Julian get chucked out the door.
Yeah, and
you have to chuckle.
Yeah, well, and that scene happens right after a very tense, emotional scene. So it lightened it up just a little bit. Yeah.
Well, and all of this circles back to what I said at the beginning about being leaps and bounds better than the first one. It's the first one, it was very straightforward. Just it started, and that train, once that train was on the track, it just kept going forwards.
Yeah.
Watching 2, you guys knew when to pump the brakes.
Yeah. Well, we learned from the first one.
Well, yeah.
Everything's a learning experience.
And I think that's what ultimately, and all the learning curves show in this, because the adding the comedic timing, adding the, just the tension breakers, because it'd be really easy to just make it all tense all the time.
Yeah.
But the way this plays out, the movie is an emotional roller coaster.
It really is.
You hit all of them, whether it's, you're laughing with the cast, or you're on the edge of your seat waiting to see what happens. You're riding that roller coaster right there with the fans. I mean, right there with the cast. And it's a hell of a thrill ride.
Yeah. Well, with the second film, this goes back, obviously the second film is Christmas themed, and one of my favorite Christmas horror films is Black Christmas.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to have that tension that was in Black Christmas. But if you go back and you watch Black Christmas, there's tension, you're sucked into it. But then there's that comic relief from Margot Kidder and, the cop with John Saxon, and there's little bits in there that to break away from that tension.
Mm-hmm. So you have to break the tension, otherwise it'll become this monotonous movie, and it can't just be all action, all kills. You know,
No,
especially in something like this where you're trying to tell a story.
exactly. And it's always been important to me through both films. You know, yes, I'm a horror fan. I love Friday the 13th and, all the horror films, but I've always connected more to horror films where you get to know the characters, you care for the characters, and then when something bad happens, you don't want those characters to get hurt, and then it hurts even worse when sadly they are taken out.
And yeah, that's the thing. It's you have to have characters that you care about. Otherwise, what's the point? They're just fodder.
Their body count.
You know,
They're just there to get killed.
I say, love them or hate them, you have to have some form of a reaction to their death. You're either happy they died or you're pissed off that they died.
Exactly. And I want it to again build up that tension because with two, you as the audience knows we are being stalked and we are being watched. We got a lot of the point of view shots of the killer watching through the window, and we have no idea that we are in any kind of danger. And when we find out, we don't have time to process it. It's time to fight for our lives. So I wanted there's a certain scene in two that absolutely creeps me out.
Just one?
Well, there's a bunch of them. But this is a fear I've always had, and it's where Riley, he's asleep in the bed, and you go with the point of view of the killer, through the cabin, up into Riley's room, and the killer just lightly brushes his hand across Riley's hair. And it's terrifying to think that there's somebody that is stalking you, and I mean, basically playing cat and mouse with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea until it's too late.
The way the killer is written in this one is a lot more methodical, a lot darker.
Yes.
And
he's very sadistic.
Yeah, it's very, very sadistic. And, that's the other thing. There's a contrast in scenes. The dark scenes are very, very dark. And, the scenes that are meant to be more lighthearted are very lighthearted. So,
yes.
You have that, so when you get into, like, the darker, more menacing spots, it's menacing. I mean, there's no question about it. This is, oh fuck, something's going down.
Yeah, and I don't want to give anything away, but if people have seen the trailer, they know that there's a new mask. The killer's wearing a new mask. Now, I don't want to give away the backstory. I don't want to give away the backstory to that mask. I will let them watch the film and find out. And yes, it is extremely terrifying. And it was, there's pictures of us on set all playing around with that mask and, having the mask on each other's faces and, all of that behind the scenes. But when it was time to shoot a scene and he's in the get-up and in the mask and has that big knife in his hand, it was not hard at all to act scared.
I'd imagine. Like I said, I've watched this a few times, and so, I mean, you get to the point where it's coming, and you still jump, and you still tense up. Yeah. On the rewatch, I love that.
Yeah, and I don't want to give anything away, obviously. There's a certain character's death that the audience knows it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
They know it's coming. This character, all I will say is, how do I put it? This character's put themselves in a situation where if they don't get out in just the right moment, they're done with.
Yeah.
And that death is extremely brutal, brutal. Like the killer just goes to town on that person. Um, it was, I mean, it was even watching it be filmed and the blood and him doing the knife. It was just freaky to watch it be filmed, and you knew it was fake.
I mean, yeah, the deaths are brutal, the stakes are higher. So what's next?
Um, well, I guess I can tell. I'm working on the first draft for part 3, which will be the last one in this franchise because this is a trilogy, so it's to wrap it up. So that's where I'm at right now.
Spoiler, everybody dies by a nuke at the end of 3. Just gonna nuke the movie. That's how he's gonna finish the movie. Killer just nukes everybody.
It gets to a point with these franchises that it just gets redundant. Like I think that's the word.
Oh, monotonous?
Yes. I mean, how many people can hold a grudge against one person?
Right.
That they just all these people in each film come out and decide, well, I'm going to try to kill this person again. And for me, it really gets to a point with some of these franchises, and I'm like, I've lost interest at this point.
Well, and in your franchises, in your trilogy's case in particular, at what point does a family stop getting together?
Yeah.
Because just for my family, and shit keeps going down every time we got together, we'd never get together again.
Well, that's one thing I will say about 3. I'll give this much away. We do a 5-year time jump in between 2 and 3. So these characters have had 5 years of peace. They really believe it's over. And then it hits them like a freight train when it starts up again.
It's like the listeners who think, we're done talking about Reunion from Hell 2 on this podcast. It's never over. I think this is the third. This is like our third episode about this.
Yeah, it is.
But each time there's always more to add, so I don't feel bad about it. So
yeah,
it's my show. I'll do what I want.
Exactly.
But no, it's, I'm glad we were able to sit down and actually, finally talk about the movie.
I know.
I've been waiting to have this conversation.
It's been a long time coming, and to be able to do it at Christmas time, being that the movie is Christmas themed, which ironically, I've noticed that all of a sudden there has been this resurgence of Christmas themed slashers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, this come out of nowhere. Like I did Reunion 2, and when I did Reunion 2, one had not been done for a very long time. And then suddenly there's just this resurgence of them.
Well, see, I think what happens is it's much like the monster crazes. Movies, the movies come in phases. We had the zombie phase, we had the vampire phase, we had, and that's kind of where we are now, where it's, we'll have the holiday movie phase, and then we'll go back to like single slasher movie phase, and then it's right now we're in this block of like holiday themed slashers, and I am here for every goddamn one of them.
Exactly, and there's not enough of them. Of course, I love the classic Christmas movies like A Christmas Story and, all those family, Home Alone, all of that. But, I'm a horror fan, and I want a Christmas horror film to watch it here.
Give me A Christmas Story as a horror film. Ralphie gets his Red Ryder BB gun and goes on a shooting spree in his bunny costume.
Exactly. And oddly, I don't know if you know this or not, Bob Clark, who directed Black Christmas, also directed A Christmas Story.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'd be perfect.
So, I mean, it's, you know, like you said, it's a resurgence. We finally had one in Thanksgiving, which I enjoyed so much. Um, that movie was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Um, but we are having this holiday. It's almost like in the 80s, I guess you could say, where
Mm-hmm.
Halloween was done, and then Friday the 13th, and then, you know, prom night. And
Yep. And it was like, okay, what other holidays can we capitalize on?
yeah.
Valentine's Day and, ultimately with, we got Groundhog's Day as Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in this resurgence of holiday themed horror movies, and I can't wait to see what comes down the pipe.
Yeah. And, I think the slasher, again, resurgence started, oddly enough, where it went back to its original roots, where it originally started when they did Halloween in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And then slasher started coming back.
Yeah, that
And
kicked
then,
it all off again.
Yeah. And then, we got Scream 5 and Scream 6, and which was refreshing because for so long all we had was little ghost girls or ghost boys movies or found footage films, and it had gotten to the torture porn films, and it just gotten to a point where those were tiring.
And now if we could just get new Freddy and Jason, the circle will be complete.
Yeah. And I do know they are doing a prequel show on Peacock to Friday the 13th, and I cannot think of the name of it right now. But I do know that Adrian King is returning in that show.
Mm-hmm. So before we wrap this up for the year, where can listeners follow you and order physical copies of Reunion from Hell 2 before it hits streaming?
They can follow me on my Instagram. Now, my Instagram is private. You will have to request to follow my page, but it's easy to find me. It's Hayden Newman, and the photo is a photo from behind the scenes of Reunion from Hell 2, where it's me and Danny and Lisa and Mark standing in front of the Christmas tree. And then it's just Hayden Newman on Facebook as well. Now, my Facebook is not private, but Facebook, you got to request anyway. So,
or head over to the Reunion from Hell Facebook group and watch for more details there.
Yes.
And as always, listeners, I will put those links and my review in the episode description. And you can find me and other great podcasters over at electronicmediacollective.com. Or if you just want to find me, head over to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Moose Media Inc. Just follow the Moose. And Hayden, as always, this has been a absolute pleasure.
Yes, I had so much fun coming back on the show, and I thank you for having me back. And all I can say is I hope everybody's ready for it, and I want to wish them all a Merry Christmas and thank them sincerely for all the support that the first film has got and the excitement for the second film.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Watch for Reunion from Hell 2 streaming probably I'd say conservatively within the next 6 months.
Oh, sooner than that. I'd say in the next 2 months, if not sooner.
And order your physical copies through Hayden. And tune in tomorrow for another installment of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. And until next time, Horror Hounds, mash on.